Earlier today, I spoke to Jerry Georgatos and Megan Cracker. They're two fierce advocates for Indigenous First Nations rights, particularly in our youth justice system. I spoke to them earlier today in light of commentary made by the Prime Minister, who was rejected to get involved in trying to fix Banksia Hill after that second death in custody of a young person in juvenile detention. We heard last week a 17-year-old boy took his own life in Banksia Hill. I spoke to Megan Cracker and Jerry Georgatos earlier today. Megan Cracker, Jerry Georgatos, good morning to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, Isaac. How are you?
Very well. Isaac. Very well, thank you, guys. It's lovely to have you, but again, not in these circumstances. Jerry, I'll start with you. The government surely has jurisdiction to intervene here.
It doesn't have jurisdiction to intervene. In fact, it's state jurisdiction, state and territory jurisdictions, carceral estates such as Banksia Hill. But it's got moral conviction that should underline its political convictions to add itself into the equation. It can't let happen what's been allowed to happen any longer. And then into the equation, well, I don't trust that much is going to change because we don't know whether the tour of the federal government minister, Melanie McCarthy, who's come as part of cabinet to Perth, will be a showpiece event where they do a show and tell of all the things that they want us to believe are the case, which they've done in the past for so long and has been part of the systemic fails in terms of scrutiny. So in the end, they need the right people to actually accompany Melanie McCarthy in there, and that includes Megan Cracker, in my opinion, who's actually worked with a lot of the families of the individuals that are actually incarcerated and have been incarcerated in Banksia, and who actually also knows a lot of the kids and can unpack their stories instead of them being cherry-picked by Banksia Hill, who are not beyond that.
Absolutely. And I do want to quickly ask about the jurisdiction, though. I understand that the centres are run by the state, but the Minister for Indigenous Affairs is in charge of representing the Indigenous community, the First Nations community. Surely, when she sees the damage being done to young and First Nations children, Megan, surely that gives her the right to step in here.
Well, that's exactly right. You have a look at the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. That report was commissioned by Commonwealth, and there are some Commonwealth responsibilities that are attached to it. The reality is, in terms of the closing the gap targets, incarceration is one of those that aren't closing anytime soon. In fact, it's the worst in the world, so I've been told. So in this respect, there is responsibility, as Jerry mentioned, for her to intervene and help and support, because at the end of the day, don't come looking for votes for the Labor government when you can't actually show, when the elections come up, don't come looking for votes when you're not actually doing anything to help and support children of Banksia Hill. It's absolutely disgraceful and really quite woeful.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that when she does go into Banksia Hill, because it's all over West Australia, and that she will go into into Banksia Hill, that she does it with the right people. Anything short of that would be a betrayal of the young people.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to ask you about, and I spoke to Peter Collier, who is the Shadow Minister for Corrective Services on Friday, who said that the current Labor government view what they're doing now as politically palatable, as in how the way they're treating these young people inside Banksia, inside Unit 18, for them is politically palatable. What do you make of that, Jerry?
He stands out in his commentary over the period that he's been criticising the government, calling them to account. He's probably said more of the right things and more of the ways forward than any other parliamentarian has at this stage from any political persuasion. So I've got call out as it is. If they were listening to his comments and not assuming politics, we'd be some way forward. But I've also got to say that other individuals have gone into Banksia Hill. You've had the former minister, who's now a backbencher in the state government, Dave Kelly, go into Banksia Hill. You've had Alana McTiernan, before she retired, go into Banksia Hill and called it what we've called it long before, a children's prison and a place that change needs to happen. And she's argued internally at cabinet for difference to be made, which wasn't actually actuated or followed up in any way or form. You've had rapporteurs denied access, and that should have been the International Rapporteurs for Indigenous Affairs from the United Nations denied access to Banksia Hill, and that should be questioned and brought into accountability why they would have denied the scrutiny of a seasoned expert individual. You've had the Children's Commissioner of the state, Western Australia, go into Banksia Hill. And you've had the Australian Human Rights Commission actually argue the case for change and meetings with government that haven't actually occurred yet. And we've had people go inside before. I don't see what's going to change. But I know Malarndirri McCarthy well. I know she's a good human being. I just hope that she doesn't get a show and tell experience and that she is compromised in what she can actually find out and what she can relay out there and actuate. But I do hold the government to account in this regard. Where they do have absolute federal jurisdiction, and it's absolute that they're the only ones that can move on this, is with Medicare. Medicare is denied to the 17-child prisons in this country, and Medicare is denied to the 115 adult prisons in this country. They're the only exception to that presumed universality. It's led to health descriptions, health disparity, unaddressed primary, secondary, and allied and mental health. And with the stroke of a pen, it doesn't have to wait for legislation to be pursued. Because that's about the guarantee of perpetuity in terms of legislation. With the stroke of a pen, the Federal Minister for Health and Albanese could push this across, and the Cabinet could push this across the federal government. With the stroke of a pen, the Federal Minister for Health can have Medicare funding to prisons in place straight away, and there should be no delay for this to happen in children's prisons, in Banksia Hill, in Don Dale, in Cleveland, in Cleveland Prison, in Townsville, and Ashley or what was there left of Ashley in Tasmania, and also into the adult prisons where we've got 18 and 19-year-old youths taking their lives.
And I was reading in the West over the last 24 hours that this young 17-year-old boy who took his own life at Banksia Hill also self-harmed in Unit 18. So there's real questions, and there's the question that I want to ask in relation to when this will close. Do we think that Unit 18 will close by the end of this year, or at least before the next state election?
It has been made clear that it won't be closed before the next state election. $1.1 million per child in Unit 18. At the moment, there's 4 children. So could you imagine $4.4 million being that's how much it costs to keep 4 children in Unit 18. At the coronial inquest for Cleveland Dodd, rest in peace, it was made clear by the Commissioner of Corrective Services and the Department of Justice, DG, that their recommendation to the government is that it not be closed until another facility is built. And that is absolutely woeful. And basically it also questions whether or not the state government of Western Australia are competent in being the government in WA. If they can't manage 4 children, if they can't manage a cohort of 60 children, they're actually letting down the constituents of Western Australia. So my firm opinion at this point, based on what I've heard in the coronial inquest and based on the attitude of the government of the day, Roger Cook, Paul Papalia, and also the predecessors with Mark McGowan, but Bill Johnson, who's still making these rogue comments, even though he's not the Minister for Corrective Services, I don't believe it will be closed down at this point until a second facility is built, and therefore it shows that there is the lack of political leadership and no political will whatsoever, in spite of the damage that it's causing children.
And finally, I spoke to Peter Collier on Friday, and he raised a really significant point, one that I think is really worth re-mentioning. The fact that the state government can build schools in less than a year, they can build infrastructure in less than a year, they can promise X, Y, Z, they can put test trains on the Ellenbrook train line, open Yanchep train line stations, etc. But they can't seem to build a new ward unit at Banksia Hill. I guess that kind of shows the priorities the government has. But isn't that a concern, that the government can build all these other things in less than a year, but we can't seem to build another unit at Banksia Hill in 2 years?
That goes to the heart of their moral and political will. Their moral will is to do nothing about these kids and buy time. And a lot of promises that have been made have been betrayed now, and they're a year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. This government has lied through its teeth. It's lied blatantly to the public. It keeps on lying. They know we know they're lying. They don't care that we know they're lying. They just care about the tough on crime, the tough on people, the presumption that most of the community doesn't understand what's going on in there, isn't available to what's going on in there, and presumes this is a fault of the children. And it's just demonisation and the commentary that's coming out and the imputations that are coming out of these children from the mouths of ministers and the mouths of bureaucrats is disgraceful, it's abominable, it's sickening, it's disgusting, it's diabolical. I've written to the Premier, Roger Cook, and I'm happy to actually let you know of a couple of things I said to him, but I maintain the privacy of everything. Roger, I feel for you too, a second youth suiciding in and because of Banksia. Roger, I text you rarely. You've got to stop listening to whoever is wording up public responses. Paul and you should speak freely, openly, compassionately, sensitively, truthfully, informed and intellectually. Roger, the lower numbers at Banksia Hill are due to the courts and also police. There is in effect an arrest and release culture, but no release and support. There are more than 1,000 kids on community orders, stranded. Yes, 80% of youth offending in terms of toll is by 60 youths, but there are still 2,000 offenders in one form or another who may not be incarcerated at Banksia, but of whom at least 70% will offend as adults and who will be incarcerated as young adults with at least 55% distance as recidivists. You will win another term, so defending rotten systems should not be a defining legacy. What you have in Banksia is inexpert personnel in management and in caseworkers. They are no more than wandering minstrels dangerously achieving nothing. If 2 deaths aren't eye-openers, then all is lost. Isaac, I say that about the staff because they've got a lot of restrictions and there's a stricture that doesn't permit them to do many of the things it should be. But I continued on with a few other things that are private and I shouldn't relay because they've been done in confidence. But I also said in terms of what we had done in 2020 and had reduced the prison population of the girls in Banksia, myself and Megan, and another individual who did the post-custody support work in addition to us. If we had been allowed to stay in there, we reduced the prison population of the girls by more than half. I know Western Australians now know this. We've rattled on about it quite a bit because it hurts to the heart and it hurts our souls that all these other souls that are more troubled than what we actually experience in seeing what's going on, are left stranded and their broken lives and their broken minds. It's not just about breaking them; they're broken, and their minds are broken, their lives are broken, and it's disingenuous to be arguing otherwise. Rest assured, I said, had we continued on in Banksia Hill, Cleveland and the other boy who I've named would be alive and 1,000 times more actively supported. So too, all those close calls with children who had flatlined and were unresponsive when found. Roger, make the big call and get us back into Banksia with the same scope and free reign we had in 2020, or you will lose another child. I've worked with thousands and lost no one. It's people like us who cut through. All the rest is rubbish. The fact is we've worked with thousands, Megan and myself, and made a huge difference. The fact is that we've supported people to the life transformative, and we've worked to the fullest extent of our volunteer capability. But the fact is, the ones that we remember, the ones that we weren't funded or resourced to have the capability or the hours in the day or the boots on the ground to make the difference, to turn their lives around, that were lost either to suicidality or ruination with incarceration and an arc of issues as a rippled damage and effect into their families and other souls and community at large. But your question, so I finish off on it, about how long it takes for government to make something work, they can build a suburb, not just a school or a shopping centre. They can build a suburb in 6 months. 15,000 houses can go up in 6 months. That's what happens. That they can't build a heavily resourced, community-based, psychosocial, psychoeducative facility with infrastructure that's equivalent to communal living in a matter of months is disgraceful. And if something is to work, it'll work from the first day. It is not complex. It's just about specialist needs and supports, nurture, love, and rapport and resonance, dynamic partnerships. And what we have instead is ill-trained guards. What we have instead is unqualified, unseasoned, inexpert caseworkers and personnel who have been stranded and traumatized, and I feel sorry for them too, because on their shoulders rests the lives of those lost and the lives of those that have gone on to adult incarceration and ruination.
So 1997 is when Banksia opened up. They've had 10,000 children 20,000 children that have gone through Banksia Hill in that period of time. Within 12 months, we lose 2 children under the Cook government.
Yes.
Paul Kapalia, who is a Minister of Corrective Services, has lost 2 children because he chooses not to listen, to hear, to act upon those that know best, the children, the families and so forth. So what I'm saying is that Roger Cook needs to hang his head in shame, and he needs to terminate Paul Papalia from that role. Paul Papalia doesn't deserve to have the portfolio of Minister for Corrective Services. He has lost 2 children under his watch.
The whole government should take blame, and the whole government should take the considerations. They should hang their heads in shame, as Megan said, because none of them are speaking up publicly, and their internal ramblings about making change don't mean a thing if you don't shift to change and don't blow the whistle. We can't hold guards responsible at Unit 18 and say that they should have done more and blown the whistle and raised the alarm when ministers who are highly paid and who we have high expectations of and backbenchers are not raising. Not a single person has blown the whistle or rattled the cage to the extent that it should be to save these lives. But if it was their children, damn well they would be doing so. Damn well.
And so they are complicit, and I've said this to Roger, you ain't complicit in this child's death and you should be ashamed of yourself. Paul Papalia, I said to him, you wouldn't treat your children like that. Don't treat our children. And when I talk about our children, I'm talking about the most marginalised, the vulnerable, the broken. Absolutely. So they definitely have blood on their hand. They should be ashamed of themselves, and they shouldn't even think about running for office again because they have proven incompetent once again.
Let me break one thing on your program first, which will get out everywhere. This boy who's a non-First Nations boy, this boy, because it's not a black problem, a brown problem, a white problem, it's a problem of incarceration, it's a problem of the carceral system, it's a systemic problem. The system is rotten to the core. Banksia Hill is rotten to the core. This boy was in and out of Banksia Hill from age 11 years of age. Most of his teen years were spent in there. He was not in the care of his family. His family did not have care of him. He was in the care of the state from 9 months of age to orders of 18 years of age. He died in the care of the state. It was the state that let him down in terms of the nurture that he should have gotten, the support that he should have got. The only respite he had was with 9 months last year, from late 2022 to mid-2023, in a facility called, or a service called Plan and Grow, which the government argues are quite costly. But in those 9 months that they supported him in an equivalent setting of a home with one-on-one nurture, he did not offend, he did not lapse. When he was low in spirit, he had somebody there to support him. The government defunded that organisation, Plan and Grow, because they thought it too costly. But what they thought too costly cost a life. Had he still been there, they could have saved his life. They could have prevented all this. And if Jerry Georgiadis and Megan Cracker had still been there, these are the opportunities that they've betrayed and missed altogether. And if they had let us still be there, Cleveland and this boy would still be alive today, and many others would have been supported to the life transformative. So they killed this boy as they killed Cleveland.
Yeah. Jerry, Megan, look, it's an awful conversation, one that needs to be had, though. I love you both. You're both fantastic. Keep up this work, and I'll keep on talking about it as well. But thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Much love and respect to you and your listeners.
Yeah, we love you too, and Jam Radio. It's amazing.
that interview from earlier today. Jerry Georgatos and Megan Cracker joining us on the program today to discuss the death of that 17-year-old young man at Banksia Hill Detention Centre. According to Jerry, this young man was a non-First Nations boy, and he was in and out of Banksia since the age of 11. He hasn't been in the care of family since he was 9 months old. He's been in state government care. He was a part of a program called Plan and Grow for 9 months, and according to Jerry, did not offend over that time. But that was soon defunded by the government as, according to Jerry, it was too costly. We'll put some comments to the minister and find out more about that. If this raised any concern for you, don't be afraid to contact any assistance